Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, for taking out the time, all of you. It's a working weekend, so thank you so much. Because the audience might not be very aware of what all of you do or what are the kind of startups that you have. So just to kick things off, I'd like to go around and begin with you, Jonathan. If you could tell the audience what you do at Turing, what is the vision that you have. We'd like to hear from all of you before we get deep into, is there some sort of cheat method or some sort of method to crack success as far as AI startups are concerned. But Jonathan, why don't you kick things off for us?
Great. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Jonathan Sudhar, CEO and co-founder at Turing. I'm a two-time entrepreneur. Turing's my second AI startup. I started my first company when I was studying AI at Stanford. In terms of what Turing does, how many of you have heard of Infosys? Okay, great. So Turing is building an AI-powered tech services company. Imagine a company like Accenture or Infosys, not built as a traditional services company, but as an AI company. Like traditional tech services companies do manual sourcing of talent, manual vetting of talent, manual coding and delivery. So we asked ourselves, what would an AI-powered tech services company look like? So we use AI to source software engineers from all over the world. We have about 3 million software engineers on Turing. We use AI to automatically vet them and match them. And now we use AI to accelerate the productivity of software engineers that we deploy. And we work with some wonderful companies like OpenAI, Disney, Johnson & Johnson, etc., where we deploy vetted talent, we deliver projects, and we help a lot of AI companies train LLMs. So if you're in the audience and you want to break into AI, you want to learn how to build systems like GPT-4, Claude from Anthropic, Google Bard, etc., you should apply at Turing. I'll be behind the auditorium like one after the panel. We raised about 140 million. The company was most recently valued at about 4 billion. And for me, coming to IIT Bombay is a pretty sweet moment. My co-founder is an IIT Bombay alum, and we have a lot of students from IIT Bombay who end up working at Turing. So it's great to be here, and I'm very happy to be with this audience.
Perfect, Jonathan. Akrit, would you also want to tell our audience what you do so that we get a sense of how you're also using AI?
Sure. Hi. Hello. Hi. Hi everyone. This is Akrit Vesh, co-founder and CEO of Haptik. I was telling somebody, this is the 6th or 7th time I'm here at eSummit. So love coming back over here. Haptik is a conversational AI platform. We enable something that now everybody knows called chatbots for the largest enterprises in emerging markets across the world. We started working on chatbots a little over 10 years back when it used to be a lot harder to explain to people what I do. But over the last year, it's become a lot easier. We just crossed 15 billion conversations processed on the Haptik platform, which makes us the largest conversational AI company in India and the third or the fourth largest in the world. We have been working on these use cases since I can remember. We've gone through 3 phases as a company. The first one, which actually a lot of you are probably too young to know, but the first phase of our company was we built a personal assistant chatbot for consumers. So you could actually use Haptik to ask any question you like and to get personal assistance. This was in 2014. Sounds familiar now, in terms of what's happening, but we built it back then. Then we pivoted to build a B2B platform where we enabled other customers and enterprises to build their own personal assistants. And then over the last few years, the 2 other areas that we've been spending a lot of time is in messaging overall. So we're also one of the world's largest WhatsApp messaging providers. Again, one-way, two-way communication. And then we've also have been building products now for SMBs to use AI more efficiently for their businesses. And then outside of that, I also run an early stage fund. It's called PeerCheck, where we primarily invest in AI startups.
Perfect. Shrikant, if you had to tell the audience what distinguishes Fractal from others, what would you say?
Yeah, I'll quickly
switch on the mic, please. You want to take my mic?
Hello. Okay. Yeah, the first time I visited the IIT Mumbai campus to hire was in 2002. Many of you were not probably born at that time. And I remember having hired a bunch of people, including Akhil Bharadwaj, who was quite a great guy we hired. We also created a company called Cure.ai, which is almost entirely founded by IIT Bombay 2015 class of 2015. Which is done really well. I'm sure you've heard of Cure.ai in the AI radiology space. That's one of the spin-offs of Fractal. So Fractal is a AI firm, power every human decision in the enterprise, work with some of the largest 150 of the Fortune 500 companies. We serve them in solving decision problems. We raised about 700 million of capital over the years. And I've been in this space for a long time, well before AI was sexy. And I've been through some of the cycles of AI, through the very early neural networks to all the interesting stuff that we see today. Fractal has spawned off about 10 different startups which have raised capital as well, and we do invest in other companies, incubate entrepreneurs from within and from outside as well. So that's my quick background.
Okay, perfect. It sounded like a pitch. Okay, lovely. But gentlemen, because we are trying to give some lessons of what you've had on your own startup journey to these youngsters who would want to dwell deeper in the field of AI with their own startups or some sort of project that they take in the future. So Jonathan, I'd like to kick things off with you. One, I want to understand, what do you feel about the adoption and understanding of this emerging technology in India specifically? Also, secondly, when anyone reads about or discusses Turing, the one thing that comes up is how you have this plethora of clients and customers, but customization is something that stands out. So how are you adopting customization vis-a-vis how you're working with Turing? So how do you feel about the adoption of the technology at large? And secondly, how does customization play a big role in AI for you?
Great question. And how many in the audience are building AI startups or thinking about building AI startups? There's a lot of folks. Great. So I would say there are three things I would keep in mind. The first thing is, if you're building a startup, the first thing to get right is make sure that you're attacking a big market where there's a real problem that you're solving. Like, start with the problem first rather than the technology or the solution. The biggest mistake I made in my first startup was picking a market that wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
I think the typical YC advice of make something people want is so true. It's so simple but so true. So step one is pick a big market where there are enough people who will pay money for the problem that you're trying to solve. The second thing is go deep into the technology, specifically right now with generative AI and LLMs, to truly understand where the disruption is. In 2012, when deep learning took off, there was a certain class of problems where there was a step function change in terms of how good we were, particularly in image recognition and so on. Similarly, with the ChatGPT moment of like a year ago, there are a few specific problems where LLMs do really well. So understand the limits of the technology to know where, make sure you have a strong why now argument. Like, what's new today or 1 year back that wasn't true, say, 5 years ago, right? So that you don't throw LLMs at every problem. If there are some problems where you shouldn't probably use an LLM, maybe you should use logistic regression or gradient boosted decision trees or something else, right? So understand the limits of the technology. And third, pick a problem where you have a moat, right? Like where you have ideally a widening moat over time. So you don't want to pick a problem where you're going to get steamrolled by OpenAI or Google Bard or Anthropic or Amazon or any one of those places, right? You don't want to innovate exactly on their warpath. So pick a problem where, by developing a deep relationship with your customer, perhaps you get a data-driven feedback loop where you can solve the problem for that vertical better than anyone else. That's what I liked about Haptik too, like the building these conversational assistants. Like it's not something that maybe like a foundational model company would want to do. So Haptik is probably going to do a much better job making those customers happy than a generic AI company. So pick a big market, understand the limits of the technology so you're applying the right, pick something that LLMs have made possible that maybe weren't possible 2 years ago. And finally, build something where there's a moat. And your last point about customization. So today, Turing's customers, which include Disney, Johnson & Johnson, Pepsi, many Fortune 500 companies, when they come to Turing, they're looking for, they're asking us, every CEO is basically figuring out, what does this ChatGPT moment mean for my company?
Correct.
what new experiences are unlocked. So there's definitely a disruption along a few specific use cases. One use case we think a lot about are private LLMs. So for a lot of enterprises, it may not make sense to just use ChatGPT 4 out of the box. You might want to build your own system, perhaps with good prompt engineering or supervised fine-tuning or RLHF.
Yeah.
So customization is going to be key. Oftentimes you might want to build on an open source model that you fine-tune with your own data that'll deliver better results. It's cheaper to operate and might help with security and privacy concerns. So this is an exciting time. So if you're in, this is the time to build if you're in AI, and I'm super excited about this AI era.
Super exciting time to build. Akrit, the reason that I started by asking Jonathan was about the customization that they do, because that's a lot of the questions that we get from the youngsters, which is one, this seems like a black hole for many. How do you pick and choose what's going to work for you? How do you decide where to begin as far as the world of AI is concerned? And secondly, what Jonathan was also pointing out, like what you do at Haptik is conversational AI. So how do you find that niche to also make a different marker for yourself?
Yeah, I think you'll hear maybe all of us sound like a broken radio because we'll keep saying the same thing, which is, you know, as people who've probably been doing this for a long time, Shrikant the longest, and you know, us a little sooner, we keep going back that look, get past the hype and the sexiness and just focus on the customer problem. I think that's the backward way to build in AI. I think he said the same thing, which is, and we did the same. So, you know, when we started the business and ultimately the path that evolved, you know, my co-founder and I, we didn't start out saying we'll build an AI company one day. We basically said that, look, when people interact with businesses and customers, it's a terrible experience. For consumers to interact with any brand. Support is broken, pre-sales questions are hard to find. How do we solve that problem? We landed up into this thing called chatbot, and we landed up into saying, okay, look, now we're going to use NLP to build it. And then we finally ended up doing last year, moving to foundational models. So, you know, all of these need, my view is to work customer backward rather than technology forward, which is we could easily say, okay, look, you know, there's, I don't know how many of these BCG, McKinsey graphs flying around. This is AI in enterprise, go big. That's not how a startup or a company is built, right? It's built by saying that, look, I know there is this problem that exists. There is this vacuum. I think I can solve it very well. And now let me see how we can use, you know, great models or even not, right? You could use different things as well. There's LLMs, there's SLMs, there's private LLMs. But that would be my single biggest feedback to anybody thinking about building in the space.
Shrikant, I want to understand from you, because you know, what Jonathan and Akrit said, that this is the moment, this is an exciting space, which also means that there's a lot of interest in this space, which means there is also going to be a lot of competition in this space. So say from your own personal experience, from Fractal's own personal experience, how do you try to distinguish yourself while also keeping that competitive edge alive? What is the kind of strategy from personal experience that you would want to use to ensure you understand your consumer, you understand your market, but more importantly, you understand your competition as well?
Yeah, I think like Akrit and Jonathan have rightly said, you need to go deep. You can't stay shallow or broad. See, there are two kinds of AI companies that get created now. One is a very horizontal AI companies. You can be one of those who can create it, but remember that there'll be very few, and they will require billions of dollars of funding to be successful. So it's possible, it's not unthinkable, but it's a very hard climb. Or you could build vertical specific AI companies which are deep into solving one specific decision problem. So I, like Akrit said, we think decision backwards rather than data forwards. So think of what is that you've been trying to solve, what problem deeply care about that. You need to have empathy for that problem, and you need so many build so much bells and whistles there. So I'll give you an example of like automotive, like cars, for example. You can think of building a car. If you're building an automobile company, someday a new engine might come in and take out your entire, you don't have to build the engine anymore because there's a much better engine that comes up. Like that's what GPT-4 was to me. if it was the automobile world, the equivalent was that you had a phenomenal engine, so you did not need an engine anymore. You could buy the engine from OpenAI directly, but you still need to build a car company, right? A car company is not just based on an engine. You need the axle, you need the steering wheel, you need the leather seats, and you need the customer experience of driving the car, the drivability. All of that stuff is beyond just the engine, which is the intelligence which is in a GPT-4. So if you're building a car company, yeah, it makes sense. If you're building an engine company, you have serious competition with the OpenAIs of the world. So I would say pick what is the problem that you solve. You're solving a transportation problem, you're solving a mobility problem, then go ahead and build a car company, and you can use any AI to be inside that. And in some ways, AI is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. For very few companies, AI is an end in itself. AI is a way to solve problems. It is a horizon. It's one of the greatest general purpose technologies ever invented. Definitely the latest, and it's probably the greatest. And to that extent, you can use it in any other way, in any way. But use it to solve a problem, and that's how you can stay differentiated for the long term. And secondly, I think always every company today is going to differentiate itself on talent and the kind of talent it can attract. So obviously you have to build a culture. And most importantly, I would say is that culture is the biggest differentiator between companies. Over the long term, culture is the biggest differentiator between companies. So what kind of problems you're solving, what kind of people you're hiring, what kind of what kind of ecosystem you're creating over the years, that is a real test, long-term test of any company is the culture.
I think that's very well put. So in a way, it also becomes a list of mistakes that you can possibly avoid when you're starting up. As Srikanth is pointing out, the culture will help you differentiate vis-a-vis your competition, the people that are working with you, and of course your attention to customer detail will also help you have that competitive edge. But Akriti,
by the way, that's a great, that's a car analogy is great. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to use it all the time.
Akriti, the other aspect that I want to understand, even as all of you are extremely excited of where the tech is going, in India specifically, there have been some concerns about whether there's enough understanding of the tech at large. So there is the other end of the spectrum. While Jonathan is saying this is an exciting phase, this is the time to be an AI, there's another end of the spectrum that is saying that, do we know this tech enough? Isn't this dangerous? Of course, on a very simplistic level, there are concerns about, will AI take our jobs? Can AI really do? What is the kind of precise calculation? So when organizations are working with AI, when you're optimistic with AI, how are you also ensuring that the narrative building around AI is also taken care of?
Look, I mean, there's a lot of very complex topics in your question and statement, which I think is very difficult to just answer in maybe the 30 seconds or a minute. So maybe I'll be very specific in trying to address what in our business we do at Haptik and the way we engage with customers, right? And the analogy I use for our customers in what we build is that we're focused on customer experience, right? So look, our goal is any customer who engages with, let's say, a Disney Hotstar, right, should have a very good experience. So we say that, look, just like banks 30, 40 years back, going to a bank was a nightmare for most of us, right? Long lines, long tellers. And what changed the bank experience was ATMs. Because the most common use case of what you would want to go to a bank got solved by a machine outside. So 80% of the reason to step inside a bank went away, which meant that the long tail or the complex 20% of the things that you wanted to go for a bank meant that it was a much better experience. Tellers were free, they were upscaled, they were addressing more complex questions than just giving you money. So that's how we think of the world in our domain, which is that when you build great customer experiences to address the most common questions that people have, your agents, your mind space, your teams, and your brand can focus on then delivering the much more harder things in a much nicer way. Now, like I said, there's obviously a lot more to that is philosophical and that is also related to India AI jobs. But maybe I'll let the others address that because that's a much longer conversation.
Okay, we'll try and come back to it if we have time. But Jonathan, because we're also trying to understand, is there a code to crack to have some sort of success with AI startups? which essentially also leads us back to how AI startups are currently functioning. What's the kind of strategies that they're using? What is the vision that they're having? For example, for Turing, you have a lot of remote work, which has again been a big debate back here in India, that does it actually enhance productivity? Does it take away productivity? Why does that become so crucial for what you do at Turing?
Yeah, I think so. At Turing, our mission is to use AI to unleash the world's untapped human potential. We think talent is universal, opportunity is not. Just being on this campus, in this city, in this country, we just see tremendous human potential, right? And I think what AI will help with is help that potential get discovered. With Turing, we use AI to automatically vet talent, automatically match them with clients, and AI will also help amplify every human's productivity. I imagine a future where all of us will have an AI surrogate that will help us be 10x more productive. We're not there yet, but we will be there soon. We did an experiment with Duet AI at Google, where just by using a co-pilot tool, a software engineer was 33% more productive in merging pull requests a week. And I actually think like the lift is going to be not just 33%, it's going to be closer to 10x. When I work with a coding co-pilot, like I'm honestly closer to 10x more productive, not just 30% more productive. So I think every person doing knowledge work is going to be amplified by AI. I'm reminded of Steve Jobs' analogy of a computer being a bicycle for the mind, right? Like how computers amplify human productivity. I think every job is going to be transformed by AI, and I think we're going to live in a future where and we see this across every function, like sales, marketing, software engineering. Sometimes it's a 10x lift, sometimes it's a 50% lift, and this comes with both positives and negatives. The positives are the bar to start a startup will come way down. Back in the day, maybe to start like a conversational AI company or an NLP company, you might have to hire 10 machine learning scientists, do some research collect training data for like 6 months, 7 months, build a model, iterate, then deploy it and continuously keep iterating on the model. Now probably the cost to start that company has come down because a lot of the brain, as Shrikant mentioned, like some of the engine can be outsourced to a foundation model company. So I think we will also see a million flowers bloom. As it relates to remote work, I think there's going to be a lot more people building tech companies outside of Silicon Valley in many different hubs. So I'm super excited for that. At Turing today, like we are about 500 people, and we are fully distributed. In India, we're fully distributed. Our 3 million developers on Turing are fully distributed. So remote work works. I mean, who knew there's Silicon Valley caliber talent outside of Silicon Valley, right? And it took us a pandemic to realize that, but I'm very excited for the future of remote work and AI.
Okay, perfect. I think that's also my cue to open the floor for questions. We'll just pass the mic around. I'll also request the lights to be switched on so the speakers can see the audience as well. We'll request you to keep your questions short so that we can take as many as questions possible. Can we pass the mic around, please?
So my question is to Jonathan. Basically, I run a services company, and I do cater like the US-based clients. Currently in thought process of AI, like going into AI field. I just want to know, like when you started, Jonathan, how did you find Turing, to establish as a brand? Because the trust comes when people trust your brand. What was your aim strategy to get that, and what was the pathway to get for the same?
Yeah, great question. So it's a bootstrapping question. When you're starting off, how do you build trust? How do you build a powerful brand? So at Turing, honestly, there is no shortcut to this. The first few customers, me and my co-founder Vijay, who's an IIT Bombay alum, we would have to talk to customers directly ourselves. So the first few sales, the founders have to do themselves. So I remember the first few clients at Turing were friends of mine who I knew from Stanford. There were people that I knew from my first startup. The fact that I had successfully sold an AI company prior to this gave me some credibility. The Stanford network also helped. but it's very unscalable. There is no shortcut. Like you have to, and for my first startup, it was sort of leveraging the Stanford brand at the time. So you kind of have to do it in an unscalable way. The thing that you cannot do is hire somebody and have them sell and do that. Like you kind of have to build the playbook yourself, and then you teach it to one salesperson, and then you hire a head of sales, right? So it's a lot of 0 to 1, go from strength to strength. Our first few customers were not, Google, OpenAI, and Disney. They were smaller companies. You use that to bootstrap one level up, one level up, one level up. Things get easier over time. The one thing I can tell you, the first year at Turing was really hard. The second year was less hard. The third year was less hard. Now it feels like we're on rails. And you also need a little bit of luck. I think that for us, the AI wave helped us, the remote work wave helped us. So for all of you building startups, like every company goes through that grind. So don't despair, and you can build a big company. Correct. You don't start by building a brand. You start just by solving a problem really well for your customer, better than anybody else. And the thing that you have going for you is, when you're small, you, the founder, will pay so much attention to that client and that account than they would get from like a big incumbent. And you use that to get positive word of mouth. Like we don't really do brand marketing at Turing. We just do a really good job at solving problems for our clients and our developers, and the brand flows from there. And I'm curious, like Shrikant, I'm sure would have a great perspective too.
Yeah, and sorry, Shrikant and we were chatting before this, he told me that at the time of building Fractal, he used to do 250,000 miles a year of travel.
Wow.
Yeah. Just to add to what Jonathan and Akrit have said, there are two aspects of brand building. One is awareness, which is when you think brand, you think of awareness. Does everyone know? When you think of toothpaste, does Colgate come first? That's awareness. The second is reputation. As a services company that you're building, you cannot build awareness. It's very hard. It's too expensive. But reputation is very easy to build. You just have, like Jonathan said, you have to just good track record, and people circulate in the industry. So your alumni, your own people will go and join companies. Your clients will move across companies, and if you have the reputation that these guys are really good at what they do, word spreads very quickly. So do not worry about awareness. That's the last problem you want to solve. I think of this as 3 moments of truth in the life of every startup. Which first moment of truth is when they're thinking of that services, do you come in mind? You cannot solve for that. The first moment of truth is the sales moment. When you have the first conversation with the client, do they feel like, oh, these guys really know what they're talking about? That's the first moment of truth. And the second moment of truth is once they've used you, how do they feel about you? Wow, these guys are amazing. They delivered on time. They did a fabulous job. So forget the 0th moment of truth. Focus on the first and second moments of truth. In fact, the second moment of truth is the most important thing that you can solve for. Then the first moment of truth. And eventually when you become big, you'll solve the 0th moment of truth as well.
I think that's very well put. Can we pass the mic around? The other questions as well?
Yeah, we hear you. Yeah, question is for Jonathan or Shrikant. You can take. Because you said about I drove there for a long time and I started my own service company. Just want to know, because I have this backlog of so much of projects which are in very legacy technology. How do we as a service company bring AI into the service company? Considering I have this backlog of large number of projects, very basic legacy kind of technology.
Firstly, you should come talk to us about partnering at Turing. But jokes aside, so I think AI can be used in a few ways. One obvious way is we call it AI accelerated delivery. So we use AI to speed up the productivity of every software engineer, data scientist, product manager, project manager, everyone. Okay? The old way of building software development has completely changed. The waterfall model was anyway kind of nonsense. The agile model was good. That was like about 10, 20 years ago. At Turing, we're working on a GPT-powered software development workflow, like to speed up the loop from idea to business impact, right? So today, like the way a product manager would come up with a product requirements document can be accelerated by AI. There can be a co-pilot that helps you create the spec, break that down into different milestones, estimate time and complexity for each step. And this is all before you come into software engineering, where you create Jira tickets or write code, write test cases, do a security analysis. Once you deploy, like how do you use Gen AI to speed up debugging, to speed up if you're building an AI product with MLOps. So one area where service companies, I think, should look at is just AI to speed up software engineering delivery. The day-to-day of a software engineer has fundamentally changed, right? The old way was you're cranking away at a code editor. Now you'll be in a conversation with something like GitHub Copilot X or Duet AI. You have an AI thought partner, right? And if you're writing SQL queries, you're not going to waste time like looking for Stack Overflow to copy paste some stuff. You're going to be like talking to an AI assistant that's going to help you write the right SQL queries, do the right analysis, and so on. We're just talking about agents. I think that's going to be super disruptive as well. So one area is AI accelerated delivery. The second is Gen AI has unlocked so many use cases for Fortune 500 companies. And from my vantage point, I would say we are 1% of the way to really realizing the value unlocked by LLMs, just 1%. And Fortune 500 moves very slow. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to help businesses solve their problems with AI and to, I would say, like start problem first rather than solution first. Like there are